Knowles on the News. Susan Knowles.
Hi, everyone. Please follow me on Spreaker.com. Just type in Stand for Truth Radio, and you can get my segments with my guests and also this Knowles on the News that I do once a week as well. Well, it was a huge, should I say, win for Donald Trump this week in New Hampshire. And I don't know if there was anybody alive who didn't expect a different turnout. He won with about 35% of the vote. And about 16%, I don't know if anybody thought this was unusual or not, 16% of the vote went to Governor John Kasich. And I don't know if I was surprised by that. I think he's an establishment guy that people in New Hampshire probably are wrestling. Do I want an establishment guy? Do I want somebody else? So they're probably wrestling with that decision. And I had hoped that after New Hampshire that John would just go away. But it looks like he's going to be here for a long time now because it is a win. Whether he'll ever win again, it doesn't really matter, I guess, at this point. He won one, so he'll probably just continue to stay in. And it looked like for a while that Ted Cruz and Jeb Bush were fighting for third place. I think third place is now gone to Ted Cruz. And Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio are, tied for fourth down there somewhere. Apparently, Jeb had spent a ton of money just to even get to the third place, and even lost that. But he spent something like $35 million. I mean, right now he's got more money than God from all the donations that he got. So he's putting every dime of it trying to win. And even after spending all of that money, he gets fourth place, maybe. So we'll have to see. Rubio might beat him there as well. And Jeb probably is not going to drop out. I know if you're like me, you've been keeping your fingers crossed, praying, hoping, Jeb, just go away, go away, go away. But it doesn't look like he's going to. He's going to take it right up to the very last second. It'll be interesting to see if Donald Trump gets the nomination, if Jeb Bush will come out and give his support to Donald Trump. I mean, typically that's what you see in something like this. All of the people who were in the running as the GOP are supposed to come out and throw their support behind the nominee and encourage everyone else to do the same. So there's a lot of bad blood between Jeb and Donald Trump. I think it would be Jeb eating crow at that point, and he possibly would do that in order to support Trump if Trump gets the nominee. So we'll just have to see how that goes. And it's funny because there's another rumor that's starting to circulate, and it came out recently on Mediaite. And I would just love to hear your comments and your thoughts about it. It was an article about Ben Carson. And according to this article, Ben Carson said that he would be open to being Donald Trump's vice president. Now, first of all, I don't know if Donald Trump would ask him to be vice president. I don't know that he wouldn't ask him to be vice president. But according to Ben, when he was asked on the day of the New Hampshire primary, if he was open to serving as vice president and under another candidate, and specifically they asked him about Donald Trump, he said, I would have to have major philosophical alignment with whoever it was. And I'd have to have guarantees that I could do some substantial things. Well, I don't know if that leaves him out with Donald Trump. I don't know who Ben Carson really philosophically aligns with. I mean, you could say he aligns with all of the candidates like that. I mean, I don't think that anybody's philosophical ideologies are so far out there that Ben Carson wouldn't have an ability to mesh with them. But he was asked also who he wouldn't be a vice president for. And he said, rather than to get into that, let's just say as long as there's significant philosophical alignment, I wouldn't have any problem. So he went back to the same thing. Now, as far as the VP is concerned, I think if, let's say Donald Trump gets the nominee and he goes on to be president, I think when you have such a strong personality as Donald Trump, it would make sense in a lot of respects to get a vice president who absolutely is the opposite of you. And I don't know, maybe we can agree that Ben Carson is the opposite. He's very laid back. He talks very slow. And he doesn't seem, now not to say that he's not, but he doesn't seem like a real go-getter, like this high energy type person that Donald Trump is. And I think that would be a good match in those regards. I don't know if it would necessarily be a good match in every other way. I have a lot of respect for Dr. Carson. I still do. But lately there are some things about him that I'm just not sure that being a president would be somebody that I would want to vote for. I would vote for him if he were the nominee. But I'm not sure that I look at him and say, yes, I feel very confident that he is presidential material. And I know other people feel differently, and that's fine. You have your right to your opinion on that. But I think that, when you're looking for a VP, you've got to have somebody so that, well, let's just say the idea is that if something happens to the president, then the VP can run the country. And if you look at other VPs, it isn't necessarily true that they can run the country if something happened. If we look back over time, Dan Quayle comes to mind. People like that who I'm not sure if something happened to the president, they would be ready to step into those shoes. But a lot of times, when somebody is selecting a VP, they want somebody who is not as highly thought of as themselves as president. But I think he'd be a very honest individual, somebody who really cares about America. So in that regard, again, he would be a good choice. Now, as to Ben saying, I want to make sure I do substantial things, I can't remember a VP whoever really did substantial things. I mean, I think if you ask Joe Biden, he would say he's the one. Look at how significant he's been. Well, since the president isn't significant, maybe he is. I'm not really sure if they've both done significant things in their own minds. They certainly have. Whether it's benefited America and been significantly beneficial to America, now that's a totally different story. But I just generally think that the VP slot is not a very good position for somebody who wants to go out and make some significant changes. I also think there may be difficulty in another aspect, and that is you're hoping if you're president, an elected president, that you're going to have 2 terms. And then you really want to pass that baton on to the vice president so that the vice president could get in and perhaps have 2 terms. So you're talking about potentially 16 years of control of the Republicans. And if people are looking at Ben Carson now and sort of going, I don't really know, I like him, I think he's great, but that doesn't really bode well for the term after whoever is elected president this time. But that could also change, in fairness to Ben Carson. I mean, he could get in as vice president and show the world that as a vice president you can make a difference, that you can do really good things. And again, the one thing that I truly respect about Ben Carson is that I think that he has America's well-being at heart. And he means that. It's not just something that he says. And I think that he wouldn't necessarily run for the presidential nominee if he weren't interested, if it were all just kind of a game to him or whatever. He could have retired. He could have gone and done anything that he wanted to. He certainly didn't need to run for the presidential office. So, but in thinking, who else would be a better candidate for vice president? At this point, I don't think that Donald Trump would pick Ted Cruz. I don't think if Ted Cruz got the nominee, he would pick Ben Carson, but who knows? I mean, he said that they are friends. Ted Cruz has said that Ben Carson and he have been friends for a while. Maybe Ted would ask Ben Carson to be the VP, and perhaps the philosophical differences are very minute, and so Ben Carson would accept. And again, I think you would have the same type of arguments there in regards to Ben Carson. Personally, for me, if Cruz got the nomination, I really would hope that he would consider Mike Lee. I think he and Mike Lee have done a lot of good work together. They get along really well. And Mike Lee also loves the United States, believes in the U.S. Constitution like Ted Cruz does. So that, I think, certainly would be a good match there. Can't think of anybody better for Ted Cruz to have as a VP except Mike Lee. So we'll just have to see what's going on. We still have such a long way to go in this whole process. I was hoping that people would just be sort of dropping out at this point. And I read also that Chris Christie is not going to be in the next debate because he didn't qualify for being in that debate. And it looks like Rubio is saying, we may have lost this time. That's not going to happen again. Yeah. We're not going to let us get into that position again. I think what really hurt him was this last debate in New Hampshire where Chris Christie called him out on the fact that he had talking points memorized for the debate. Now, I'm sure the other candidates had a lot of points memorized as well, but they didn't sound as well rehearsed as Rubio. And that's not a good thing for him, but what will work to his advantage is that Chris Christie won't be in the next debate. So maybe go ahead, memorize, and nobody else will call you on that. But I think now that that's been pointed out, he's going to have a lot of difficulty coming in with those same talking points. People are going to be expecting it this time and ready to call him on it themselves. And it'll also be interesting to see in the South Carolina debate how many people are in the audience this time for Donald Trump. Because I think last time, if I'm correct in this, Donald Trump had about 20 people that he got tickets for in the audience, and everything was sort of stacked against him. There were so many people, and you could really tell that they were not Donald Trump supporters because they were booing him, which is unlike typically what you see in a debate. People are not booing Donald Trump or anybody else for that matter, but especially not Donald Trump. So I think that it was a little bit of a surprise perhaps in the beginning with Trump, and then he announced that obviously these weren't his supporters. So he called them out on it. And I don't know about you, but these debates are really getting harder and harder to watch because it's the same thing over and over again. I'm sure Marco will come in with his same talking points, maybe acting more casually about them and talking like they are not really memorized this time. And so will Ted, and so will Ben. Everybody will come in with the same thing. Are we not at a point yet where we can hear specifics? Haven't we gotten there yet? I want to hear specifically what you intend to do. Now, I've said this before. Perhaps they're waiting when it's the big debate between the Democrats and the GOP. And perhaps that's why we're not hearing too much. We'll have to see. And probably, as you also heard, on the Democrat side, Bernie Sanders beat Hillary Clinton. I guess this time he was in charge of tossing the coins. That's all I can gather from that. But I guess also Bernie won big when it came to women, which they just assumed all the votes were going to go to Hillary Clinton. So I guess that just says that you should never assume anything. And then this week I wrote an article about something that I saw in regards to veterans that it really, I don't know how much longer we're going to need to talk about the Veterans Administration and how they let veterans down. I mean, the VA hospital, everything. There are horror stories coming from veterans that I talk to about the treatment that they get from the VA. And this case, the story that I read, wow, I knew I had to write an article about it because I wanted to try to get the public's attention once again in regards to what's happening to our veterans, the horrible treatment that they're getting. at the hands of the VA. And this has been going on forever. And this particular story is about a veteran who is in his 90s. His name is Emil Limpert, Limpert. And his story basically began back in World War II in 1944 when he was fighting in the Philippines against the Japanese. And he was in this foxhole with other military guys. And I could never find in the story what branch of service he was in. I guess it didn't matter to anybody, but it mattered to me. I would like to know. But in this foxhole, a grenade was thrown in, and he and these other guys that were in there all were injured from the mortar shrapnel. And he got it in his leg, and I think one of the other guys may have gotten his leg blown off, which is horrific. And so what happened was, because they're out in the Philippines, right? There's no VA hospital that he could be going to, and they didn't have an ability probably to get these people there quickly or anywhere else in 1944. But anyway, he received medical care in a jungle tent, a jungle tent. They patched him up and said, okay, back you go. And he went right back out and started fighting again. Well, when he came home after the war, a couple years later, whatever, he noticed, my legs, something's still wrong with my legs. So he goes to the St. Louis VA hospital, and he got most of the metal removed from his leg. So why there's still some left in there, maybe it's too close to a nerve, or who knows why it's in there, but it's still in there. So he decided at the time, I've got enough money to pay for things. I'm not even going to bother with the VA because I don't even want to argue with them. Okay, so here's get this in your head. To me, I had to get this in my head. And then once I did, I went, whoa. It just kind of proves the point about the VA. So he comes back after the war. It's probably late 40s, early 50s, early 1950s. And he decides, you know what? I'm not even going to apply for disability because I don't even want to have to fight the VA. So, wrap your mind around this one. This has been a problem that has been going on, at least as far as we know from this story, in the 1950s. Now, I'm sure it went further back than that, but let's just benefit of the doubt. We know for sure this guy's like, I don't even want to argue with these people. I'm not even going to do it. I'm not even going to try. So this problem has been going on, and it still goes on, and we haven't stopped it yet. So now Emil Limpert is in his 90s. He's got a wife in her 90s. They've been married about 70 years. He started running into some financial difficulties. So they sold everything. The house, the cars, everything that he had, gone. And they're in an assisted living facility now. And he has no money. And he needs to get money. At 90 years old, you can't go out and get a job. It's not going to work. So he's thinking, where can I get some money? I'm desperate. So the only thing that he hadn't really tried was the VA. Let's try to go back to the VA. Let's try to get disability benefits. And at least I'll have something. And when I've talked to other veterans, they say that paperwork to try to get disability benefits is just horrendous. That there's so much to fill out that it's beyond what any of us ever know. And I'm sure it's pretty ridiculous. So here's this 90-some-year-old man. He can't fill out this paperwork by himself. So he enlists the help of another organization, and they help him, and they gather all the information that they have. The one thing that he doesn't really have is in 1973, the VA hospital at that time, all the records were on paper. We didn't have computers with databases and all that. Everything was on paper. Well, there was a fire, and millions millions of medical records were destroyed. And his was one of them. So he gave the VA all that he had to prove that he had been in the military and had served in World War II. And the VA came back 2 months later and said, we're going to need some more proof. We're going to need some affidavits from people that you served with, other 90-some-year-olds that I'm sure most are dead. Oh, and we're going to need the name of that hospital that you say that you received medical treatment in the Philippines. So you can understand people need proof. I mean, he'd only been waiting 2 months before he got denied, right? So 2 months. And the VA said, oh, no, we need more information. You couldn't decide that in a week, 2 weeks. I'll give you 3. No, 2 months. And then we say, no, you're denied, and we're going to need all this information. And again, I understand. The VA needs to know that you were in the service. He doesn't have medical records. I get that. Okay, here's what he did give them. He gave them his discharge paperwork. Now, I don't know about you, and I haven't been in the military. I've only had a father, 2 brothers who were in the military. All 3 are veterans. So I don't know how this works. But whenever, just commonsensically, whenever you get discharge paperwork, that means you've been in. You don't get discharge unless you've been in the service. So that wasn't good enough. Okay. So in addition to that, he gave them the Purple Heart that he earned, and if that weren't enough, 2 Bronze Stars. Now, I guess you could go out. I know you can go down to a surplus place. You could probably buy those. I get it. And of course, this 90-some-year-old man is going to try to cheat the VA out of benefits that he probably will get to enjoy for maybe a year if he's lucky, depending on whether he lives. He's mid-90s, I guess, now. Maybe he's got a few more years. God, I hope so. I hope he lives to be 120, and the VA has to pay him until that time. But chances are he's not going to. Now, what he also supplied them with was a roster of those injured and the X-ray from the VA hospital in St. Louis that showed that he had the mortar in his leg. Now, since there's stuff still in there, metal that's still in there from that, I say go back, have the VA look at it, have an analysis done that says, oh yeah, that came from 1944. Okay, you're in. I mean, this is how ridiculous it all really has gotten. And this isn't, if this were like one guy, you could say, okay, well, they're being overly cautious and they just want to be sure, and let's not take it out on the VA. But this isn't one guy. This goes on like every day. Talk to a vet, ask them. They'll tell you. It goes on every day. And not only that, recently there was another guy, another World War II veteran in his 90s that wanted to get disability benefits from the VA. So what happened? Well, this man had waited. Now get this. Emil Limpert has been denied after 2 months. So he waited 2 months to be told he's denied, right? This guy had tried for 67 years. 67 years to get benefits that he earned. He waited 67 years for the VA to give him the benefits. And you know what? He wouldn't have them to this day if it hadn't been for pro bono attorneys that took his case. And he died at age 94, and he only got to use the benefits for 3.5 years. How disgusting is that? 67 years worth of benefits he could have been getting, but oh no. No, we have to deny him. And so you're only going to get 3.5 years of it before you die. I don't know how you excuse that behavior. I just don't. There's got to be an easier process. And what I did, and I took a lot of heat from it from some people, like Trump supporters. I reached out to Donald Trump and I said, gosh, can you help this guy? Where's the money that you raised? Can you use that to help this guy? Because Donald Trump has said over and over at his rallies, I am for the veterans. I want to make everything right with the veterans. I want to help veterans. Now, Donald Trump is under no obligation to help this man. None. But because he's been outspoken about it, I thought, great, this will be wonderful having him get involved. Because he could use this as an example. Look at what the VA is trying to do to this elderly man. How ridiculous. So I wrote this article up on the Blaze, and it's easier to get somebody's attention when thousands of people are looking at it rather than he gets an email from me. But I had a lot of people saying, why don't you get off your you-know-what and send an email to Donald Trump? Well, if I had thought that my email was that important, yeah, I would have done that right away. But I'm imagining Donald Trump gets a lot of emails, and mine are just 1 in a million. So I wrote the article instead. And I did eventually send it to Donald Trump. I emailed the article to him, and I also tweeted to him. Haven't heard back from him. Don't really expect that I will. There's just, again, the odds are against it. But this man needs help. He really does. And I'm hoping that and let me just say, I know there are other veterans out there with just as important causes as Mr. Limpert. I get it. And all veterans deserve their benefits. I think because of his age, it's crucial that this man get a little bit of preferential treatment, just a little bit. Not asking for a lot. If Donald Trump said, hey, I want to donate $1 million, oh my gosh, that would be like a dream come true for me that Donald Trump would do that for this man. Even if he gave him, $30,000, this man would just, this man would break down and sob. Anything that could be done. Now, I know that there is a GoFundMe account that's been set up. I don't know who the person is or anything else about him. But if you go to GoFundMe and you look up Emil, E-M-I-L, Limpert, L-I-M-P-B-E-R-T, you will find the GoFundMe account. And it was so sad about this GoFundMe account when I found it, because this had been set up on the 8th. And a couple of days later, there was only $25 in the account. $25 for this World War II veteran who has served his country, who didn't want to ask for benefits because he had money on his own back then and he didn't want to have to argue with the VA. So now, in desperation, he reaches out to the VA and is denied because he doesn't have affidavits and he can't tell them the name of the jungle tent hospital that he was treated in. It's ridiculous. This needs public attention. Share the show, share the article, call the, I don't care what you have to do. And if you're living in St. Louis, Missouri area, I know that they've reached out to Senator Claire McCaskill, and she's a Democrat from Missouri. I don't know if she's even going to pay attention to it. And again, the government creeps along, right? Typically, that's what we see. This man doesn't have forever to sit and wait. He has a critical issue right now, needs finances. I don't know if he's going to be kicked out of the assisted living place. I hope not. But he needs help. He needs it now. The government's going to go, well, we'll look at it. We'll talk about it. We'll bring it up in committee. He doesn't have that long. And I've talked to some veterans who say, typically when you send in an application for disabilities, you get it denied almost every time. And the ones I've talked to, that's what they've told me. And another man, after doing that and being denied, went another 20 months through the evaluation process. I don't think this guy could go through 20 months of evaluation process. I really don't. I don't know what more you need than an X-ray from I don't know when the x-ray was taken. I'm assuming it was taken, years and years ago, and that maybe he had a copy of it. Take another x-ray. Look and see what's in his leg. And I know the VA is going to say, yeah, but we don't know if that's from the Philippines or he just happened to be standing beside another grenade when it went off. Like we see every day. I mean, come on. But right now, they're asking to raise $10,000. And right now, there's only $680 in that account, in the GoFundMe account. $680. That's better than $25. Honestly, I admit that. But this should have been $10,000 in the first day. And again, I know that Donald Trump has absolutely no obligation to pay him anything. Donald Trump could give him $10,000. That's what Donald Trump probably gives in some tips in restaurants. And some people have asked me, well, why didn't you ask the other candidates? Because the other candidates didn't just raise $6 million. And even if that money went to charities, maybe Donald Trump can call those charities and say, hey, this is a special case. What can you do for this guy right now? All the rest of them have said they want to help veterans, but all the rest of them, as far as I know, they don't have the money. They haven't raised money. They don't have it right now. Donald Trump has it. And again, I'm hoping against hope, that he may see this somewhere and he may hear this radio show and help this man. He deserves to be helped. He earned it. And the VA is probably waiting and hoping that the guy is going to die before they have to do anything. It's despicable. And also, there was an article today about the VA. It was interesting. Article is in the Washington Post. And the Democrats are claiming that a Koch, the Koch brothers, a Koch-backed group wants to privatize the VA. Oh no, privatize the VA? How dare you? Any good progressive would not want the VA privatized. You know why? Big government is the answer. So we can't privatize something that may mean it could work and work well. How dare you try to take it away from the government? Haven't we been doing such a great job? Now, I know there are problems in the VA, and we need to fix those, but the government knows what's best for you. Give me a break. Here's what was said. This was by Hillary Clinton. This is another part of the Koch brothers' agenda. They've actually formed an organization to try to begin to convince Americans we should no longer have guaranteed health care, specialized care for our veterans. No, Hillary, that's not what it's about. It's not about they should no longer have guaranteed health care. The left always tries to do that. They try to scare you into thinking that your benefits are going to be taken away, that we don't want you to have anything, we want you to die in the streets. No. And you know what, Hillary? Veterans are smarter than that. Veterans know that the VA doesn't work. They don't have health care benefits right now. Are you kidding me? They have to beg for them. They have to go and sit in long lines and hope they get an appointment within months before something really serious goes wrong. And you're sitting here telling me, oh, they don't want them to have guaranteed health care. Give me a break. The American public is not that stupid, Hillary. Now, here's what else she says. I will fight them as hard as I can. I bet you will. I bet you will. Because nothing is better for you to fight than making a bigger government. You couldn't help people in Benghazi. You couldn't help anybody else. But boy, you can go out there and you can go against those people that are trying to help the veterans by privatizing the VA. And we don't even know that this is true. It's something I think the Democrats are thinking, oh, well, let's use this. This will sound good. We'll get votes off of this. We'll scare people. We'll scare those veterans into thinking that they're not going to get any more health care, that they're going to just have to suffer in silence. Oh, and she goes on, the veterans, you're going to love this. I think there's where we can enlist the veteran service organizations, the Veterans of America, because yes, let's fix the VA, but we will never let it be privatized, and that is my promise. Ooh, God, doesn't that send chills down your spine? It does mine. Not only does Hillary not want to give you any money now, I mean, she knows there's a problem. We're going to fix the VA, so veterans, you just wait around, okay? Just wait around. But while you're waiting, let me just have you do something else for me. Let's have you go out and help me work against these organizations that want to take your money away. The Koch brother organizations, those evil people. So help me to help you. Sheesh. Unbelievable. And then Bernie, feel the burn, got into it. He said, Secretary Clinton is absolutely right. There are people, Koch brothers among others, who have a group called Concerned Veterans of America. Oh no. And those people, that organization is funded by the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers, by the way, want to destroy... Oh, here we go. Now, we've talked about the veterans. We're going to try to convince the veterans. But who else can we scare? Oh, I know. Elderly people, because that always works. Oh, my God, this is fun. So he goes on to say, the Koch brothers, by the way, want to destroy Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, every governmental program passed since the 1930s. Yes, there are people out there who want to privatize it. Oh, no. Say it isn't so, Bern. So here we go again. The left having to scare not only veterans this time. Let's throw the elderly in there, too. We do it every election cycle. We wouldn't want to keep them out. Those evil Koch brothers want to come in and privatize all of the government programs that you're getting now, and they want to take and destroy everything that you have right now. And unfortunately, it's going to scare, probably the veterans know, but the elderly people who, by now they should really know. They hear this every election cycle. I've heard this every election cycle since I began to vote. Oh my gosh, the elderly, we're going to destroy their Medicare, their Medicaid. Those people on the right, they're just horrible. They want to make those elderly people die. And for some reason, it does work for them. It really does. You'll have elderly people talking about, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I mean, it's so disgusting to think that they do this. They don't even care that there are human beings who are listening to that or reading about it who are actually in that position to be frightened because of the fact that they're thinking, I'm going to be without nothing. How am I going to eat? How am I going to pay rent? What am I going to do? I mean, look at Emil Limpert. It's not so far from the truth, is it? But it's not truthful when they say that. The conservatives are not trying to kill the elderly and hoping that they just die. It's more like people on the left that are doing that, honestly, in all of their progressive agenda. If anybody is going to be blamed for it, look at the left and their agenda, and then maybe you'll have something there. But it's so ridiculous. Now, I don't know about this Concerned Veterans for America. I don't know how good or how bad, but at least it's somebody with maybe a different thought about how to help cure some of the issues that have been going on with the VA since the beginning of time. It says here that the Concerned Veterans for America has been one of the most vocal critics of the VA since the wait time scandal that unfolded in 2014. Whistleblowers allege that dozens of veterans died at the Phoenix VA while waiting for medical care, and the VA Hospital of Inspector General eventually acknowledged that wait lists may have contributed to the veteran's death. The Inspector General also found patient and appointment record falsification to be a systemic, years-long problem. And the CVA, the Concerned Veterans of America, was one of two major veterans groups that called for the resignation of then VA Secretary Eric Shinseki and launched a Fire Shinseki petition. And basically, he, as you may recall, he resigned in May 2014. Probably wouldn't have done that had the attention not been put on him. And in response to the scandal, Congress passed a bipartisan $16.3 billion bill to overhaul the VA. And as you know, nothing has really been overhauled. Nobody's been fired. No, there's no significant firings, let's say. There may be one or two. I know some people recently got demoted and then they had an appeal and they got reinstated. So I don't know. You tell me if people have been fired and everything's been overhauled. I haven't seen that. And it's ironic, that Sanders is saying something about this because many veteran groups still criticize the senator for not reacting to the scandal quickly enough, according to this Washington Post article. They still point to Sanders' comments in May 2014, the month after the Phoenix VA problems were aired publicly, saying that the VA is a large healthcare system that inevitably has problems. Well, that's great. That's really good to know. So you're saying they're large, government large, okay. They're large, and because they're so large, they inevitably have problems. So let's see, large VA system, problems equals problems. Large government also equals problems. Now, members of the Senate VA committee also wrote a letter urging Sanders to hold more oversight hearings had not been fulfilled. Surprise, surprise. Now, apparently in 2015, this bipartisan task force commissioned by CVA proposed drastic changes, including converting the VA administration into an independent, government-chartered, nonprofit corporation. And this is the element of the proposal that gets called privatization, which usually refers to a complete outsourcing of government services to a private industry. Now, again, you don't expect Hillary and Sanders to tell you that. They want to just act like government's going away, which in my opinion, would be the best thing for this. But government's going away, and they're going to privatize it, and the Koch brothers, of course, are going to want to make a profit, right? They're all about profit. Well, this is a non-profit organization, but they're not going to tell you that. Now, there's even more, I guess, to that proposal from CVA, and that is to split up the current Veterans Health Administration's payor and provider responsibilities by creating two new entities, one for health insurance and another for health delivery. Not a bad idea. I don't know what the veterans would think about that. They say the health insurance through Veterans Health Insurance Program, VHIP, would be a program office at the Veterans Health Administration, which would continue to exist. The veterans would continue to be eligible for free VA health insurance, but would also receive premium support from private insurance. Now, we have that choice program that, according to the veterans, is just not working. Heard that from a number of veterans. It's supposed to be that you can go to a private provider of your choice, and it'll get paid for. But there's a catch. The VA has to, I believe, the VA is still involved in the process, and they're the ones paying those private providers. So if they're not paying on time, which I can pretty much bet that they're not because they're not paying anybody on time, then how many providers are going to continue to provide services? And I don't know if the providers get the full amount either. They may have to agree to take a lesser amount. Getting back to this, so it says, ultimately this office would provide direct subsidies for veterans' health care, whether veterans get it from private or public providers. And the premium support program would be similar to the federal employee benefits, health benefits program. Veterans can access private health care by selecting from a menu of insurance plans. And the highest priority veterans with 50% or more service-connected disabilities are offered larger amounts of support. Future veterans in the lowest priority groups would not qualify. Future veterans would be subject to cost sharing based on levels of disability or financial need, according to the Stars and Stripes. And it goes on. It talks about other things. But to me, this is a better solution than doing nothing, which is what has been happening within the VA. I see no new improvements. Now, I don't have my finger on the pulse of the VA. I grant you that. But I don't see too much going on that's improved. If you feel differently, let me know. You can write me at Susan@SusanKnowles.com. Let me know. We'll keep watching, though, to see what happens. And if it improves, oh, my gosh, that would be great. But don't count on it, because the Democrats are just going to keep knocking it and get no support behind it because they're scaring everybody. Now, in other news, this came out this week. The IRS announces that taxpayer data has been stolen in a cyber attack. Isn't that great? They identified it as trying to steal tax refund data. We have this just about every year, and you'd think that the IRS would try to do something to ensure that this is never going to happen. Well, they don't. It's not their money. What do they care? And something came out from them saying, using personal data stolen elsewhere outside the IRS, identity thieves use malware in an attempt to generate e-file pins for stolen Social Security numbers. And that came from the agency. An e-file pin is used in some instances to electronically file a tax return. But don't worry. I'm sure nobody on the left had any information stolen. It's probably only conservatives, so don't worry about it. And it said the agency identified approximately. Now, this is a small number. Just prepare yourself. It's so small. It won't matter. The agency identified approximately 464,000 Social Security numbers targeted in the attack. But not to worry, only 101,000 were used to successfully access an e-file pin. No big deal. And they want to assure you no additional information was taken. So they got just enough. But don't worry, it's okay. And the information stolen is likely not enough to file fraudulent returns. But just in the event they do, guess who's going to be held responsible? Guess who's going to have to spend the rest of their lives trying to convince everybody, those people that you try to get credit from or a bank, that wasn't your tax return. Or that you have to go to court and say, well, criminal charges shouldn't be applied against me. I didn't file those fraudulent returns. No problem. And the agency said it would be working to notify taxpayers who were targeted. Oh, well, that's good. I guess, they're going to get that out to you right away. Plan on seeing that really quickly. And Senate Finance Chairman Orrin Hatch, Republican from Utah, said he's going to be asking the IRS commissioner at a hearing, what in the world happened. While it appears that the IRS was able to successfully block this attempted breach this time around, it's past time we fundamentally rethink our approach in authenticating taxpayers and processing tax returns, according to Hatch. Yeah, right after they get the VA fixed, they'll go and try to do something with this one. Again, it's not their money. They don't care. And I say they don't care. Of course the government cares getting your money. How else would they survive? How else would they grow without your money? They'll get it some other way. These people, you know how they are. They're going to look for somebody to get this money from any way they can. If they don't have, and you know what? Here's the other thing. This is a refund for the most part. Probably. They're not concerned about giving you back your money. So that might take you a while to get a refund, even though you filled out the paperwork, got everything in. It's the government. The bigger it is, the slower it is. And as Bernie says, the more issues, right? You got to know when it's that big, there are going to be issues. So hopefully no one listening to this program filed through e-file. And remember how Donald Trump came out and said we should really stop having Syrians come in here at the border until we've figured out how to correct the vetting process, where we really can vet people, which is impossible because these people don't have paperwork from Syria. They're not going to put down on paperwork somewhere, yes, I was a Syrian refugee, I worked for ISIS for 2 years. It's not going to happen. So there's not going to be a paper trail or anything else of who these people are. But we also had Ted Cruz coming out, a couple of other of the candidates, but nobody was as outspoken as Donald Trump. Well, out of the Jerusalem Post this week. Remember how everybody was calling Donald Trump crazy? Oh, you're just a racist. You just want people not to come here because you don't like immigrants. Turkey detains 34 people with explosives, suicide vests at Syrian border. The Turkish military detained 34 people and seized up to 15 kilograms of explosives and 4 suicide bomber vests as they tried to enter Turkey from Syria. Really? You mean people in Syria have suicide vests and explosives? You're kidding me. Oh, my goodness. They said the private news agency and other media outlets said the group, now listen to this, consisting of 4 men, 10 women, and 20 children, were detained at the border. So, wait a minute. Aren't these just families? You have women and children and the men there. I mean, this is a little different than what we see coming into other countries when it's just all men. So, I mean, this is just an innocent family coming in. So wait a minute. You're trying to tell me that Donald Trump may have been right about all this? Unbelievable. I don't know how many more times you look at something like that and how you continue to make excuses if you're in the United States, Mr. President, and saying, oh, everything's fine. Everything's fine. John Kerry, everything's fine. I'm sure they'll say something like, oh, but, it would be different here in the United States. Nobody would try to do that. Nobody would have like a backpack of explosives like the Boston bombing, so we don't have to worry about that here in the United States. Come on. Yeah, we do need to worry about that in the United States. I mean, how blatant is it? You go to Turkey and you have all of those explosives, suicide, bombing vests, everything else, and you're just like, whoop-doo-doo, I'm going to stroll across over here into Turkey. No big deal, because I've got the women and children here I'm going to use as decoys. Yeah, we really do seriously need to continue to put the pressure on the government not to allow people into this country, especially from Syria. But this government continues to just be headstrong in getting that done. I saw earlier in the week that Texas was once again denied their efforts to try to keep Syrian refugees out. The Obama administration is just going to continue to do everything they can do to turn this country into another Europe, where right now, if you've watched anything in the news, you can see that the refugees that they've brought in a lot of the countries over there, especially like Germany, are just wreaking havoc in the towns. And now for all of you looking for just a fabulous education, for one of the most liberal universities that exist, Harvard University, they are receiving a record number of applications this year. 39,044 to be exact, which is nearly an increase of 5% over last year. And the reason they say is that they've been reaching out to lower income students who otherwise might not consider going to this wonderful university. And they said that they waive the application fees for those people. And since they've been doing that, their applications have soared in the past decade. So it's a financial aid program that charges students now based on family income. Well, typically that's what it's always been, so I'm not sure how that's any different. And when I say it's been that way in every university. That's for financial aid, you typically have to meet certain income qualifications before you can get financial aid. So I don't know how Harvard's any different, but I'm sure because it's Harvard, it's so different. And they said a fifth of current undergraduates are from families earning less than $65,000 a year. And for these families, Harvard covers all of the costs of college. Unbelievable. So we can have a whole bunch of liberal young people coming out of this elite university within the next couple of years. Won't that be great? All with the progressive ideology of the left coming out and telling us that socialism is the way to go. That vote for Bernie Sanders because you can feel the burn and get free stuff. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Harvard now is teaching a conservative a curriculum, but I'm not going to hold my breath for that. Okay, I'm just not. And then finally, in the news, the Zika virus. The Alabama Department of Public Health reports the first confirmed travel-related case of Zika virus in Alabama. It's an Alabama resident. You know, it just amazes me that each and every year, there seems to, around this time, there's always some new case of something. Ebola, some other virus, H1. I mean, I don't understand. And it never comes out before winter. I don't know if this is truthful or if it's just done, again, to scare people because it's wintertime, it's cold, people are getting flu shots. So it's like, well, let's get something else. Like, oh, that's right. Let's come up with the Zika virus. I mean, you didn't hear about the Zika virus until now. And then Obama is wanting to get billions of dollars to fight the Zika virus. And if the facts about the Zika virus are true, then, I mean, it's really a horrible thing. I guess in most people, it's transmitted typically through mosquitoes. And for most people, they're just sort of mild type of symptoms. But for someone who is pregnant, there's been an apparent link to birth defects and other pregnancy-related poor outcomes, which is really horrible. And I know in some places they're setting up mobile units this is overseas someplace, to abort babies. And you're wondering, again, are we taking this to the extreme, or is there really something that we should be this worried about it? I just don't know. But it does make you wonder when this government gets involved so quickly, asking for so much money. Is there really something to it, or is this just another way to follow some type of agenda that they have? And I really don't know. I mean, I have seen some pictures where the babies, it does something to their brains, and it's horrible. It really is hard. I used to believe everything the government pretty much told me. I don't anymore. It's been a long time since then, but I was a lot younger when I believed everything. But you just have to wonder why almost every year there's this new outbreak of something. A new outbreak that we should all go out and get vaccinated for, a new outbreak that we should spend a lot of money on. And of course, we're not going to do anything with travel. We're not going to restrict travel. So what are we going to do? We're going to spend billions of dollars to have everyone vaccinated and everyone overseas vaccinated. And if it is needed and it does save lives, and I'm all for it, but I would really like to know where all the information is coming from. Should we believe the people that in charge who are telling us this? And let's give it to those countries that are really affected by it, especially if it has something to do with bringing it into the United States. Let's stop it before it gets here. And I know that we give billions of dollars away every year to all these countries, so it's not something new that we're going to be doing. We are a compassionate and caring country that we've always done this type of thing. This is nothing new. But I just wonder, and I'm not sold on vaccines for everything. I don't like it. I know someone who has personally been affected by getting a flu vaccine. It's actually a friend of a friend. And person is right now unable to walk, and according to what they can determine, happened right after the flu vaccination. Who knows if it's connected? Sure looks like it, but so I'm not one to run out and get vaccinations every other day. Let's just say that. And this may be something where once again they encourage you to have your kids vaccinated and pregnant women, and I don't know what this vaccine would do to pregnant women, what's in the vaccine. If you're doing something hurriedly, getting something together, there's always a risk. And I guess every person is going to have to decide what they should or shouldn't do. So we'll have to see where that goes. I'm sure they'll probably get the money together for Obama as he wanted. I hope that you are going to be watching South Carolina, see what happens there. I hope your candidate is the one who gets all the votes, and we'll just keep watching the election. There, as I said, there is a long way to go. So glad that you were here today. I'm glad that you're here each and every week for Knowles on the News and for my radio show, Stand for Truth Radio. Until next time, it's Susan Knowles with Knowles on the News.